Hi everyone, it's Karen Murdock here, a sports scientist, professional soft tissue body worker, senior clinical lead, senior counsellor and director at BeBalance BU. Joining me today is Dr Gillian Wilson, a specialist clinical psychologist who has lectured to university standard and has over 20 years experience working in the NHS, including CAMHS and child health psychology. So we have a wee question for her today and we're hoping she'll give us a bit of her enlightenment on. My teenager spends all their time in their bedroom and I can't get them to talk to me. How should I deal with this?
Hi Karen. Well, I suppose the first thing to say is that this is a really common thing that I hear from a lot of parents. It's really difficult for young people growing up, even more difficult these days than whenever I would have been growing up myself. There's an awful lot more pressure from social media that wouldn't have been around 20 years ago. So I suppose the first thing is just to say to parents that, it is normal and don't be over worrying about it. Young people need space. They need somewhere that they can go and escape and get away from the world. As a young person, they're going through a lot of changes. They're going through a lot of changes physically. Their bodies are changing with all the hormones that are balancing out. They're going through exams at school. They're managing peer relationships. So there's all that in the mix. So they need time to process stuff. They need time to get a bit of space, and just, as I said, kind of get away from it. And saying that as a parent, that can be difficult because as parents, we all worry about our young people. We all worry, are they okay? And is there anything serious going on that's happening that we should be helping them with? And sometimes even a situation that is difficult, if you know what it is, you feel, well, at least you're a bit better equipped to know how to help them. But when you don't know what's happening, it can feel really disempowering. So I suppose the thing is that often our sense is to keep asking them questions. Are you okay? Is there anything you want to talk about? How did school go today? And often as a young person, your response to be having a lot of kind of questions fired at you is to shut down and not want to talk. So the first thing is just, I suppose, taking the pressure out of the situation so that you're not bombarding them with questions. Give them a bit of space, remembering what it was like for us when we were young and growing up. I think as a parent, you have to manage all the demands of the world and, managing mortgages or rent and a job and finances and all of that. And you forget actually that often when we think back to whenever we were a teenager ourselves, a lot of the things that make us feel stressed about our young people, we were exactly the same at their age. So I think it's important to keep connected with how we were as teenagers and to think, well, actually, what helped us as a young person to talk to our parents about things. So that's the first thing I would say. The other thing is that I think it's important, if you can, when children are younger and growing up, to try and create a really good line of communication with them, because if those foundations are there where they'll talk to you about the small stuff, then as they get older, they'll be more likely to talk to you about the big stuff. So I realise if you're listening to this and your young person's 15, you're probably at that place now where you're thinking, I don't know what to do. But maybe for parents with younger children, it's, even if there isn't anything particularly concerning, just trying to make sure that communication line's open, and that no matter what's going on, they can come to you and they can talk to you about any problems, and that however difficult it is, I always say to my own children, I may not like what you're telling me, but I'll still be here for you, I'll still love you, and I'll help you work it through. So in terms of saying maybe you have your 15-year-old and you're trying to get them to talk to you about stuff, what you're really wanting to do is, rather than forcing them to talk to you, which is not going to get anywhere, is to create opportunities in the day and in the week for them to talk to you. So you're trying to create spaces where they can kind of open up a conversation. And often that is not sitting staring at each other across the table. That can feel quite intimidating for adults and children and teenagers. So it's maybe trying to have those conversations when you're doing something else those snippets in the day when you're engaged in a different activity. So one of the things that can be quite helpful is the car ride. If you're maybe collecting them from school or you're taking them somewhere else, you're not making eye contact, so you're actually doing something else. You're driving the car and they're sitting in the car, and you kind of can have the conversation, but you don't have to look at each other. The young person can turn the radio on if they want, so it can feel much less intimidating. Other things would be maybe trying to talk to them when you're doing an activity in the house. So if you're making dinner, ask them, do they want to give you a hand making dinner, and try and open up a little bit of space there. Or another thing I find quite helpful is getting outdoors and doing something like going for a walk. So obviously if you go for a walk, you've all the benefits of going for the walk. There's research more recently coming out saying that one of the things that's very helpful about walking in particular is that because of the movement patterns, it helps your brain to process what you're thinking and talking about. So for a young person, if you're going for a walk, even in the town, or ideally if it's out in the countryside, so you're getting a lot of greenery and fresh air, if you're talking through something that's difficult for them while you're both walking, it's also helping them to process all the emotions of the problem at the same time. So I suppose, just to summarise, it's trying not to get into a battle of trying to force them to talk to you, because you're not going to win the battle. So it's trying to create opportunities instead. And if they don't, sometimes it takes a while creating those opportunities before you start to see the benefits. But the more you do that, the more opportunities you're giving your young person to talk to you. And I suppose when they do start to tell you stuff, even if in your head you're thinking, oh, I don't know what to do about this or that, oftentimes for the young person it's just actually being able to say it out loud and tell you that's the most beneficial thing. Often young people don't want us to give them solutions. They just want us to listen to them and be there for them and help them feel secure and loved. And really, as a parent, that's probably the best thing you can do.
So that'd be where, if you're having that conversation, you could say to them, do you want advice or do you just want to vent?
Yes.
And it's just let them vent.
Yes.
If they want to vent, vent. And also making, as you say, about taking the walks as part of your family, just part of your family makeup, that if you have tea at the table whenever you have opportunity to talk, or generally a teenager will find the most inconvenient time to want to talk to you.
Yes.
Whenever you're in the middle of something and it's saying, I need to set that task aside no matter how important, because my child has chosen this opportunity to speak to me and I need to listen.
Absolutely. Because one thing I would say is, if they come to you and want to talk to you and you're in the middle of doing something and you shut them down, they will be much less likely to come back to you, because the message they're getting is doing the dishes is more important to listening to what you want to tell me. So it's very difficult to do when you're really busy. It's very easy to say, can I talk to you in half an hour? But actually, it's really important to just give them that time when they want to talk.
Yeah, take that moment. And I'd say it is usually an inconvenient time, but with parents, I think we're going to have to roll with that.
And the other thing is, like, sometimes it's maybe asking the young person, what, if they do start to talk to you about things, then saying, well, what's the best way to do this? So for some young people, they like having a bit of space that's set aside during the week, that you just get to check in with them. Yeah. Maybe more so in primary school than kind of adolescence, but having a time when things are generally quite settled and quiet, maybe on a Saturday morning, 11 o'clock's check-in time. Yeah. And they know that they can come to you at that time with anything. So there's a wee bit about what works. With other young people, that doesn't work at all. But I think so long as you are creating opportunities for them to talk to you, then that should start to pay off.
Yeah, and just in a non-pressured way, just open conversation.
Yes.
Always about the little stuff, and then the big stuff will come.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very well, Gillian. And we'll check in with you later.